Namaste. Welcome to all the viewers. I am extremely delighted that Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal took this initiative of organizing a series of talks by scholars, particularly during this lockdown period, wherein people can engage themselves in various intellectual activities. So I am so delighted that I have been invited to give a talk on a certain topic on which I have been doing research for a couple of decades at least. So the title is The Need to Include Research and Teaching on Indian Tradition of Science and Technology in our universities. In fact, the title could have been intriguing to me itself because till my postgraduate day, I was not even aware of something called Indian Science and Technology. To me, the impression was science and technology has its origin elsewhere, not in India. If at all Indians have made some contribution, so the contribution is towards religion, towards spirituality, and detrimentally towards the development of caste system and so on and so forth. This is the kind of image that is being portrayed about India. So I myself would have been puzzled with the title about Indian Science and Technology. But to my surprise, by providence, I was sort of drawn into this kind of a study. And once I went into studying astronomy, mathematics and so on, I was really fascinated to know the kind of immense contribution that has been made by Indians towards the development of science and technology. See, we might have seen in several places, particularly in various museums across the world, so brilliant bronze statues and so on and so forth. Unless there is a science behind it, unless there is a beautiful technology behind it, brilliant technology behind it, it would have been absolutely impossible for people to have built this. So what are the various areas in which Indians have made immense contributions? If we look into these texts, then we are really surprised to know that immense contribution has been made at least even 2 millennia before, particularly in the form of this linguistics and the development of epistemology. And so too medicine, if you look at Ayurveda Shastra. So linguistics, initially it was thought of something like abstruse and artificial, all the sutras which have been created and so on and so forth. But today the appreciation of Panini has grown enormously, particularly with the advent of linguistics in the Western world during the previous century. So what was considered abstruse and artificial has been really considered as a brilliant contribution towards understanding the very structure of language, nature of language and so on and so forth. So this is something which we need to. So too we have brilliant contributions which have been made by, this is referring to Panini. So when it comes to analyzing meters, poetry and so on, Pingala has made immense contributions. Strangely, none of these contributions has been acknowledged well in our school curriculum. As a result, what has happened is many of Indians are absolutely clueless as to what kind of contribution has been made by Indians. Okay. If you look at Ayurveda Shastra, for instance, I was quite puzzled to see the immense importance that has been laid down by the authors of these Shastras to acquire scholarship. So, for instance, few months back I had an occasion to browse through Sushruta Samhita. So there are a couple of verses which are quite striking to me. He says that a person who just gets into a particular discipline and gains knowledge in a very, very limited form from that discipline cannot be really considered as a scholar. In fact, today people think that if they specialize on some particular area somewhere, without having a much broader understanding of various other disciplines, they feel that they are somewhat superior, far, far, far superior than anybody else in the world. But here it says a much broader understanding is required, and of course specialization has to be there, but this broader understanding is completely lacking today. So there the Ayurveda, he says, Ekam Shastra Madhiyanaha Navidya Shastra Nishchayam Tasmad Bahushrutaha Shastram Vijaniyat Chikitsakaha. So Ekam Shastra Madhiyanaha means by simply dwelling upon one particular Shastra. Navidya Shastra Nishchayam. Shastra is basically science, a systematic study of something. It can be Mimamsa, it can be Vedanta, it can be physics, Vaisheshika as they call it, it can be Nyaya, it can be grammar, whatever it is. Ekam Shastra Madhiyanaha Navidya Shastra Nishchayam. Shastra Nishchayam means the essence of that Shastra cannot be understood because there will be linkages from various other disciplines. Even today, if you look at, so there is something called physical chemistry. Unless you know physics, you may not know that well. Unless you know necessary mathematics, you may not know. So there are various other things. If at all somebody can master, in fact, in those days people used to have training at least in a few disciplines. At the age of 5 they will start, and at least for 15 years they used to sort of study with serious commitment, getting into Gurukula and so on. And there this Kanadam Paniniyancha Sarvashastropakarakam is something which has been brought out. For you to take up study in any discipline, so you should have prepared your mind to analyze things properly, and this analytical skills are brilliantly developed by exposing the student to grammar as well as logic. Therefore, they have said Kanadam Paniniyancha Sarvashastropakarakam. Whether it is Adhyatma Shastra or it is medicine or it is Vedanta, wherever you want to get into, so you should basically train yourself in these disciplines. Why is it that it has been stated that Kanada and Paniniya are very important? So this Kanada Shastra basically helps you in trying to understand how one needs to apply various pramanas in order to get a valid knowledge. So a Laukika, a normal man, a layman, so simply accepts things as they come. But for you to analyze things, you need to know whether this is a valid means, so whether this can be validated by any means by us, etc. So this training, therefore this Nyaya itself is defined as Pramanaihi Artha Parikshanam Nyayaha. Pramanaihi Artha Parikshanam Nyayaha. So Artha Parikshanam means examining the truth of something. So this is what is called Nyaya. Pramanaihi. Pramana refers to means of knowledge. Karanam pramanam. So Pramanaihi Arthasya Parikshanam means examining whatever that has been presented to you. In fact, our tradition has been not to simply accept. One may think that Shabda is the most important pramana and everything that is being given should be accepted as it is. This is not the way this tradition has grown. This Indian tradition of science. So starting from Upanishads, you will find hundreds of questions being posed. So this Artha Parikshanam is something which is extremely important irrespective of the discipline that you get into. In fact, the hallmark of science is to disbelieve. So in fact, this has been authored. So when you consider the philosophy of science, so science is something which has to be questioned. So you have to question. So pramanaihi artha parikshanam nyayaha, and therefore they always laid importance on gaining some ground in nyaya. In fact, very recently I must tell you that I had an occasion to get into the Gautama Sutras of Nyaya. Before that, I mean, unfortunately, even in the Indian tradition, once this Navya Nyaya came into existence, people forgot studying this Prachina Nyaya. So this Prachina Nyaya, so which has its origin in the form of Gautama's Nyaya Sutra, has been brilliantly commented by Vatsyayana. On that Vatsyayana's commentary, we have the commentary of Uddyotakara, we have the commentary, Uddyotakara, and we have the commentary of even Vachaspati Mishra, then we have Udayana. So there are beautiful commentaries which have been authored in trying to analyze the very knowledge structure. So the means of knowledge, what are to be accepted as means of knowledge, and what is more interesting to know is the hierarchy of the different means. So in the Nyaya system, so there are systems which accept only Pratyaksha as Pramana, there are systems which accept only inference as Pramana, there are systems which accept Shabda and Upamana are also means of knowledge. And of course Arthapatti, Anupalabdhi, different philosophical systems. So different philosophical systems gain. You are not able to hear, people are not able to hear? See, these, the different means of knowledge so have been brilliantly analyzed, and the hierarchy of different means of knowledge has also been analyzed. And one particular thing that I would like to highlight here is this Pratyaksha is considered as overriding all other pramanas. So there is a beautiful statement which we find in Bhamati. There he says, Na hyagama sahasramapi ghatam patayitum ishati. Agama sahasramapi means even if there are 1,000 scriptures, if it is in contradiction to Pratyaksha, then it cannot be accepted. It cannot transform a ghata into a pata. Okay? Ghatam patayitum ishati. Ghata means pot, pata is fabric. So this is something which we need to understand and appreciate, because there is a general thinking among people that the Indian tradition has been such that it has been just accepting this Shruti, Smriti and so on without any kind of questioning and so on. In fact, if you look at one of the most fundamental sciences, which is astronomy, so this is primarily based upon Pratyaksha. Okay? So even Vedanta Shastra, so we will see that there are brilliant arguments which have been given how one cannot say that this Pratyaksha has been subordinated. Okay, so this is impossible. So there are nice discussions which we need to understand. This is just an introduction to tell you that before entering into any Shastra, so people feel that this Kanada and Paniniya form the foundations for preparing the mind of the student to excel in that particular Shastra. Okay. So this is considered as something which is fundamental. Okay. So these Shastras, maybe there are different kalas, maybe there are different Shastras. One could ask this question, why at all one should be studying, because these are ages of internet, Facebook and so on. So if at all one masters this technology, one learns how to write some Python code and so on, then our life is all fulfilled. Why bother about Kanada and Paniniya, etc. This may be the thinking. But let me tell you, so life is not merely this. In fact, there are so many people whom I have come across. So having excelled in particular field, and this may be something which is fascinating and glamorous when you are, say, between 15 to 30 or 15 to 35. So beyond that, at the stage of 40-45, people really feel that I have missed something. I mean, what is all this, etc. So then, if you had not had any kind of grounding in this, it becomes far more difficult for people to get into other kinds of studies. And therefore, it is very important for us to give a certain input to certain disciplines to a minimum basic level, which they can build upon later. So rather than simply trying to provide some abstract things, okay, right from the beginning. Okay, so this is one important thing. The other thing I was telling you, particularly this is all the more important in the Indian context, because there is a certain sense of inferiority complex which has been created among the children unknowingly by not exposing themselves to the rich scientific heritage we have. Rich heritage, in fact, rich cultural heritage, rich scientific heritage. At least to some extent this culture, I mean dance, music, etc., it is still prevalent. But when it comes to science and technology, it is almost unknown to people. Let me just tell you a brilliant passage which has been given by Sir C.V. Raman in 1969. So I would like to quote that. So Raman observes, we have, I think, developed an inferiority complex. I think what is needed in India today is the destruction of that defeatist spirit. We need a spirit of victory, a spirit that will carry us to our rightful place under the sun. A spirit which will recognize that we, as inheritors of a proud civilization, are entitled to a rightful place in the planet. In that indomitable spirit, if that indomitable spirit were to arise, then nothing can hold us back from achieving the rightful destiny. So this is something which I felt is extremely important. So even from my own analysis of my own career, I would not have taken the kind of pride into our civilization and the kind of knowledge system that it has provided to me if I were not to be exposed to any of them. I would have definitely had this inferiority complex because, I mean, all these modern gadgets that we are facing today is all something which has been a product of some discovery which has been made in the previous century. So in which the participation of Indians has not been that significant. So if you look at only these things, so then obviously you will have this inferiority complex, and there is no way by which you will feel that your civilization has contributed to the understanding of the science and technology in the world. So there are a few things which are very fundamental even from the viewpoint of mathematics and astronomy, which I have delivered in so many other talks. But the point that I want to convey here is, so ignorance can never be brooked. So we should just see to it that we demolish this. So purely from the viewpoint of understanding the right history and the kind of right that we have to possess the right knowledge, history of science and technology has to be introduced. Secondly, history of science and technology must also be introduced for people to appreciate the development of ideas as it happened in various civilizations at various points of time. So very fundamental discoveries have been made even in mathematics. Some of them are known, but many of them are not known. In fact, there has been a recent correspondence just 2 days back with an academician. I would like to quote that. So this academician, who is employed in Ghent University in Korea, so there is a branch in Korea, and he is basically an applied mathematician working in bioscience department. Thanks to this lockdown period, this gave time to this brilliant man to just look into some of the YouTube videos which are available in the web. Incidentally, so he happened to look into some of the lectures that have been delivered by a couple of my colleagues and myself on Indian mathematics. So having seen that lecture, so he has written almost some 500 words, so a long mail. Towards the end of the mail, he makes some very interesting remarks which I would like to read to our viewers now. He says, all in all, I felt a sense of pride in knowing what my ancestors in the land of my birth have achieved. Okay? I felt a sense of pride. Okay? So in knowing what my ancestors in the land of my birth have achieved, sadly, this was never taught to us in the school. We always got and are still getting the impression that all the known mathematics is from the West and Indians had probably nothing to do with it. Because the kind of mathematics that you study, the way it is taught, etc., gives you this impression. Although some bits about algebraic problems in Bhaskara's Leelavati, so Aryabhata, being the ancient mathematician and so-called Pythagorean theorem in India in ancient times could be found in my textbooks. In my opinion, so this is not at all sufficient. It is as though the link between our past and the future is being broken by means of our current education system. So if we try to see to it that this is also provided, then we can nicely build a bridge between the current developments and what was done before. Okay? So I am sure many mathematicians in India are unaware of the contributions of the early mathematicians of India. In future, I strongly feel this needs to change by suitable adaptations to our curriculum. So what has been reflected by C.V. Raman almost 50 years ago has been sort of echoed by this person based on his own experience. And this experience is same as my own experience, and I am sure this will be the experience of so many people. In fact, I have seen so many people expressing this feeling either through emails or when we deliver the lecture. So what is so special about this Indian mathematics? So is something which I would like to highlight for a few minutes now. See, there is a serious problem. So though there is an overwhelming interest among various people to include the contributions of Indians in our curriculum, there is also a certain sense of reservation among various people in trying to understand why we should try to introduce this. See, there is a problem which is faced by various scientists. Let me give you one simple example, so that things will become clear to you. So the example that I am going to give you is the statement that has been made by a certain person, a very well reputed scientist, on the draft of National Education Policy. So here the title is to primarily inform you that we need to carry out research and we need to take this material to our students. In the National Educational Policy draft which was made and circulated among various academicians for inviting comments, so there was a statement, and this statement really pricked the scientist. So let me just tell you, so what happened? So here there was a statement which was made by the people who drafted this policy. The statement goes like this: India has a long tradition of riddles and mathematical puzzles, often written in the form of poetry. For example, as in Bhaskara's work, this is 12th century Bhaskara, that would be enjoyable, enlightening and beneficial to students. What is the statement? The statement is, India has a long tradition of riddles and mathematical puzzles. In fact, I distinctly remember when I was a school boy, some Pandit used to come and then he used to pose certain puzzles to me. So these puzzles were quite exciting. Some of them were possible for me to answer and some of them were not possible, and next time the Pandit came, I used to run away. See, anyway, the point is there are very nice simple puzzles which are being posed. So these puzzles are presented, are beautifully couched in the form of verse, and they are presented. So that's what this person is referring to. India has a long tradition of riddles and mathematical puzzles, often written in the form of poetry, as in Bhaskara's work. That would be enjoyable, enlightening and beneficial to students. Making learning enjoyable through fun exercises, games and puzzles across subjects will be a key aspect to ensuring that students stay engaged in school and at the same time develop strong mental capacity and creativity. Okay, so this is a very succinct statement that has been made. But the reviewer who sent a certain review about this, who is a well-known scientist, so he makes the following remark. He says, in the school education part, it is suggested that the study of mathematics can be made enjoyable, enlightening and beneficial to students by introducing Bhaskara's works in the curriculum. He says, are we now going to take a retrograde step of invoking false glories of ancient India in this manner? So the problem that we find is, the moment they see, so there is a certain reservation in their mind that, so introducing these things will be a retrograde step in the progress that we want to achieve. So this is a certain false understanding which we need to get rid of by providing a right understanding of what this is. See, there is a certain problem, the problem of ignorance, which can be handled to some extent. But there is also this problem of having a certain prejudice and preconceived notion about the contribution that has been made by Indians. To get rid of this, both ignorance and a certain preconceived notion, we have to expose people to the knowledge that is available. Once that is done in the right way, then I think we will be able to develop a certain sense of pride, self-esteem in the contribution that has been made by nation, which is extremely important for the growth of nation. So if we want to see the nation flourish, so then people of the nation should have a certain sense of pride and self-esteem, which is very, very, very important for their contributions to be fruitful for the growth of the nation. Now, having said that, so let me just tell you how these have been beautifully presented in various mathematical texts. I'll just give you a couple of examples and then perhaps we can have interaction. Now, whether it is mathematics or it is philosophy or it is astronomy, etc., initially Indians were presenting something in the form of sutras. These sutras are remarkably concise way of presenting things. And the height of it has been achieved by Panini in a very structured manner. And of course, all other Sutrakaras have been following essentially the same system, even in the pre-Paninian times. So the Sutra literature has been one of the earliest form of literature in the Indian tradition. After that, we find, in fact, there was a very interesting comment which I came across, and it has been written by Fritz Stahl, quoted by rather Fritz Stahl. Fritz Stahl was a well-known academician. He has written about the science of language, so the important contributions that have been made by Panini and so on and so forth. Apparently, in the Indian tradition, people who have been traveling from abroad have noticed how the education has progressed and how people used to learn these sutras by heart. So there, this Ising, so who came in 7th, 8th century, so he makes an interesting observation that people start learning these Paninian sutras at the age of 8 and they commit to memory all the 4000 sutras in just 8 months. So this is an interesting remark which has been made by this traveler who came to India, and it has been recorded and it has been quoted. So that is the kind of capacity which these people used to have and perhaps even nurture. If you look at the kind of scholarship that Bhamati, Vachaspati Mishra exhibits, or any other scholar for instance exhibits, so the kind of deep knowledge as well as the breadth is something which is really amazing. And unless this person develops that kind of a capacity, it will be impossible for him to have a mastery in several disciplines. So the power of brain has been optimally utilized by those people in those days. See, this is something which we need to understand. If today you cannot gather, it doesn't mean that people 1200 years before were unable to do that. So, and we also should not think that, so the ability to grasp more things has been continuously increasing, which may not be necessarily true. So there have been brilliant minds at various points of time, and these are known to us through various scriptures that they have authored and handed over to us. So one thing that I want to point out is, after the Sutra period came up the brilliant way of composing all these mathematical formulae in the form of poetry. So the point that this person makes in this NEP draft is essentially to convey, so to just reiterate that statement, to develop strong mental capacity and creativity. So composing something in the form of beautiful verse always makes this person extremely creative. So poetry is one of the forms of creativities that we will be able to see, irrespective of the language in which it is done. Now we find exemplary scholarship in the form of composing mathematical works and other literature in the form of poetry. So let me just give you a couple of examples from Bhaskara's literature, for instance. One of the problems that we face today in mathematical education is the students feel that it is somewhat dull, it is beyond my capacity, and so on and so forth, and they drop out or do not take interest. So this, I believe, is due to the way it is being presented to them as a very, very abstract thing, rather than something which can be really enjoyed by them. So one way is to present mathematics in the form of beautiful poetry. It need not necessarily be in Sanskrit, it can be in any local language. After all, people have been composing literature in the form of poetry in various Indian languages. So Tamil or Kannada or Telugu, we have brilliant literatures which have been composed, and this contributes to the creativity of the person. So this is very, very important. So you cannot be a dumb fellow, so trying to hone your skills in a particular discipline rather than being really a creative person. Okay, so this is one of the aspects. So it makes it enjoyable, it makes the person really creative, it also makes the person to simultaneously work through the mind as it is being narrated. See, this is one of the major problems that I was informed when I had been to USA. So maybe 1.5 years ago I was there, and there, so this person who is in charge of school education in a particular area happened to be an Indian, and he came and told me that so there are serious problems which are being faced by these American students as compared to Indian students in learning mathematics. This is first statement. The second statement that he made was, so he said that they have serious problem with word problems. So word problem essentially means a problem expressed in words. Now here we have a certain tradition in which things are being expressed in the form of beautiful poetry. So this is further quite important to appreciate that this not only engages the person but also increases his creativity. So let me give you one or two examples from Bhaskara's work as to how he brilliantly presents various examples. So when he expresses the mathematical relation. So for instance, so when he gives an example for demonstrating this simple first order equation. Okay. So he gives a verse like this. Amala kamala rashe trimsha pancham shashasthaihi trinayana harisurya yena turyena charya gurupadamath shatbhihi पूजितं तेन पद्मैः सकल कमल संख्यां क्षिप्रमाख्याहितस्य. It is a very simple equation. So amala kamala rashehe. So he gives a very natural example, so which will be really attractive to students and make him learn, instead of simply presenting in the form of equation with algebraic notation. So he says, imagine a student going and plucking lot of flowers from a beautiful lotus pond. Kamala rashehe. And then he says, he plucked a certain number of flowers, let us say X. Okay. So he offered 1/3. Triamsha means 1/3. Panchamsha 1/5. Shashtha 1/6. Turya 1/4. So he says, Trimsha pancham shashasthaihi trinayana harisurya yena turyena charya. Trinayana harisurya. So the Shiva, Hari, Vishnu and Surya, they were worshipped, and 1/4 was given to Amba. Okay. Then he says he had 6 flowers remaining in his hand, and that he offered to his own guru. Guru Padamatha Shadvihi Pujitam Tena Sheshapadmaihi Sakala Kamala Sankhyam. So tell me what is the total number of things. If you just solve this equation, it will amount to some x is equal to 120. So you can just see 1 by 3 plus 1 by 5 plus 1 by 6 plus 1 by 4. It will be some 57 by 60. Okay, so the total minus this, so is equal to 6, and you will see that answer is 120. So this is just to give a simple example of how he presents examples drawn from nature and your practical life. Okay, if you think of presenting a little more involved, let us say quadratic equation, even then, so they nicely bring out examples from our literature. Okay. So, which will make the student learn the literature, which will make the student learn poetry, which will also make the student develop a certain skill to formulate the problem which has been given in the words in terms of the mathematical equations, develop one's own notations, and so on and so forth. These are all extremely important skills which one needs to develop. So, first listen to it, then carefully. So, if everything is sort of given to you, then there is nothing much. So so he gives Partha Karnavadhaya Marganaganam Krudhorane Sandadhe Tasyahadhena Parasya Chardham Nivarya Tacharaganam Mulais Chaturbhirhayan Shalyam Shadbhirateshu Bhistribhirapi Chatram Dhvajam Karmukam Chichedasya Shirasharena Katite Yanarjuna Sandadhe Vartha Karnavadhaya. This is a story that is being told to the children. Okay. Simultaneously they know how to formulate a quadratic equation from this. So Karnavadhaya Marganaganam, a heap of arrows. Kurdhorane Sandadhe Tasyardhena. So half of it was used to retaliate the arrows that were shot. Then there will be a root x here. Then 6 arrows were used to kill Shalya. So 3 arrows were used. One to chop off the umbrella, one to chop off the flag, and one to cut his own bow, the other opponent's bow. Shalyam Shadbhi Atheshu Bhistribhirapi Chatram Dhvajam Karmukam. And finally one arrow was shot to sever the neck of the opponent. Correct. So this is essentially a quadratic equation problem. So irrespective of the topic of discussion, so they construct some brilliant examples which are either drawn from Purana, which are drawn from flora, fauna, and so on and so forth, which is what makes mathematics all the more interesting. So, but today the problem is, so mathematics is simply presented in the form of abstract equations, notations, and so on and so forth, nothing more, and thereby people develop a phobia. So the reason why we need to look into this tradition is to just learn how to make the pedagogy so all the more interesting. Okay, so this is a problem that is being faced, and there are various committees that are being formed by people and by NCERT and so forth to just see how we can overcome this problem. So we need to start teaching, one to develop pride, another to develop self-esteem, the third to leave out the ignorance that we have, and most importantly to see what we can learn from the pedagogical skills that have been presented, okay, so to us, and which has worked for several centuries. So it is not that there is some unique way of teaching mathematics. So different traditions have to develop different ways, have developed different ways, and they have to be different because the environment in which people grow are very, very different. So this is teaching is one aspect. The other aspect is doing research in these works. Let me tell you that be it astronomy or mathematics or Ayurveda Shastra, much of what has been done by Indians has been unfortunately completely forgotten because of the introduction of certain other kind of a curriculum which has isolated people from learning what has been done by Indians. So this can be addressed partially by teaching, but we do not have even a complete picture of what has been contributed because many of these are still available in the form of manuscripts. So the manuscripts are never ever studied today. So consequently, so a lot of manuscripts have been put to destruction. So earlier there was a tradition for people to copy from manuscript to manuscript. But nowadays, so there is a certain problem wherein these have been completely ignored by people, ignored by libraries, ignored by state governments. So though there are certain efforts, the scholarship even to study these manuscripts is somewhat dying. So we have to necessarily introduce both teaching and research. There are some significant contributions which have been made which have not been understood by various people. Let me tell you one simple example. When I entered into this discipline of studying, this was thanks to some project which was taken by a group of motivated people. So they were inspired by someone called Dharampalji. And inspired by his interesting book called Beautiful Tree, where he has highlighted how systematically the education system finished the Indians from gaining roots to their own culture, tradition as well as science and technology. Okay, so this is primarily and how it was well established. So both has been narrated, and some bright scientists and engineers, so inspired by that book, they started looking at some of these aspects, and they pulled in a lot of projects together, and I was sort of drawn into that project in early 90s after my post-graduation. And there, so I was sort of wonderstruck to know the kind of contributions made by Indians. And one of the interesting things that we came to know was essentially a planetary model which has been attributed Tycho Brahe. So it is generally referred to as Tycho Brahe model. So there is something called Copernican model, there is something called Tycho Brahe model. This Copernican model is sun-centered. The earth is also moving around the sun. Whereas the Tycho Brahe model is, so earth is at the center, the sun moves around the earth and the planets move around the sun. All the planets move around the sun. That earth moves around the sun, which was presented by Copernican, is not based on observation. It is absolutely impossible for anybody to come up with naked eye observation that earth moves around the sun. It is absolutely impossible. So that requires very sophisticated measurement. Okay? So which can be made only through telescope. So even Copernican model is not based on observation but some sort of a speculation. So anyway, let us leave that apart. The point I am trying to say is, so when we studied this text, so we came up to understand how Nilakantha makes a brilliant transition from the earlier planetary model to a new planetary model, which is not only mathematically correct, but also improved upon the technique by which one has to solve the problem. So it improved not only the accuracy but also the much larger understanding of the cosmological model. But the point is, none of these things were known. So this is a brilliant discovery which has been made by him. So he set right both theoretically, and the other point is observationally this was done, not like this Copernican thing which just comes, okay, out of some speculation. So it is observationally, having observed. So he beautifully argues. In fact, this is what I was trying to tell you, that Kanadam Paniniyancha. Okay, so this training in that. In fact, the classification of the different means of knowledge is even found in Vedic literature. This is something which is not known to people. See this Vedic passage, Smriti Pratyakshamaidihyam Anumanaschatushtayam Yetair Aditya Mandalam Sarvaireva Vidhasyate. This comes in Aruna Prashna. So what is being said? Smritihi Pratyaksham Aitihyam Anumanaha Chatushtayam Yetaihi Aditya Mandalam. Aditya Mandalam essentially means the orbit of the sun. So as seen from the earth, sun is seen to be sort of moving and planets are moving. So the point that Nilakantha makes is all these four pramanas have to be employed. So the basis of understanding and the classification of various pramanas is as early as that. So these are considered as means of knowledge. Okay. So these are very interesting things. So the research, and recently, so as I joined the IIT, so there were occasions to discover certain things which were not known before by studying some of these texts which are either unpublished or published and not studied. There are two levels. So by the efforts, sincere efforts that were put by a few scholars in the previous century, so a few texts which were in the form of manuscripts were brought to printed form. But those scholars, we do not have so many of them, a handful of them. Okay, in fact, it can be single digit only. So these scholars put a lot of efforts to bring these texts in printed form, but they didn't have enough time to study. So unless we try to bring into this educational curriculum both teaching and research, we will not even have a proper assessment of what is the Indian contribution. Fortunately, I had a few students who could study some of them, and we could see that some brilliant contributions have been made by Indian astronomers, which are simply mind-boggling. So these are students, who have done reasonable amount of study in both engineering and science. So they themselves struggle hard. So with the kind of training that we receive in the 21st century in mathematics and physics, so it is not so easy to understand. So what we are talking about is something which has been done some 500 years ago or 1500 years ago. So these are things which we need to first of all know for ourselves. Then only will we be able to make any systematic assessment of the Indian contribution to science. Now with some knowledge here and there, so we will not be able to even have a much broader picture of what is Indian contribution. So it is very, very essential. So not only in mathematics and astronomy, which is something on which I have been working for several years, and therefore I will be able to speak with much confidence. But as far as I can see, so the kind of study that has gone in understanding our linguistic tradition, all the contributions that have been made by people in the Ayurvedic tradition is not complete. So if we have to arrive at a much better picture, we need to invest. We need to invest both in teaching and research. Unless we invest in teaching now, it will not be possible for people to do research. So we should just plan in such a way that if we start giving some courses, so there are minds which really get excited and they may plunge into research. So unless we train them, it will be absolutely impossible for them to choose this path. For all this to happen, first of all, some respect for this Indian traditional knowledge system has to be there. If we think that, so there is nothing there right away, so then I don't think we'll be able to move forward. Okay, so thanks viewers. So there has been some disturbance. I heard that it was not initially understood because the volume was not quite good. But anyway, so we'll try to answer a couple of questions. So that has been posed by a few people. Is there any school or college training in Vedic mathematics, especially in South India? See, let me tell you. So there is something called Vedic mathematics, which is a sort of a limited thing to 16 sutras or plus a few more sutras. But that is something which is called as Vedic mathematics, authored by Bharati Krishna Tirtha in the previous century. So it is in a sense styled in the Vedic style, but not necessarily Vedic in that sense. So it is something which has been done much later. So there are various courses which are offered by various people in Vedic mathematics. So it is available throughout India. But what is more important is to understand major contribution which has been done by various mathematicians starting from the Shulva Sutra period, which is 800 BC to 1500. So this one should not simply call as Vedic mathematics, but it should be called as Bharatiya mathematics or Indian mathematics. And to teach them, we don't find any school or institution. So though there are some institutions which are supposed to train them to some extent in the form of Jyotisha departments, not much is being taught because more focus is on astrology rather than astronomy. Okay, so this is the answer to that question. Then we have, can we discuss Leelavati contribution in mathematics? See, this Leelavati is one of the texts which has been brilliantly composed by Bhaskaracharya in the 12th century. So the contributions that have been made by Bhaskaracharya in this work has some novelty. What we need to understand in the Indian tradition is, so there have been several texts that have been authored. So starting from the Shulva Sutra period till very recent period. So at least we know of texts which have been composed so even till 19th century. Okay, if not in 20th century. So till that we have voluminous texts on astronomy and math. Mathematics per se, so these texts were not authored beyond 14th, 15th century. So we don't know at least. Okay, so we have not completely explored. So all the manuscripts everywhere. But to a certain understanding, so we have texts exclusively devoted to mathematics. Okay, till 15th century we have. So the contribution that we find in various texts, so is woven above what the previous author presents. We find some novel technique that has been evolved over a period of time. See? So this is what we see. But mathematics as such is not considered as the major discipline because most of the developments took place in the context of astronomy. It's not that mathematics was ignored. So basic mathematics is something which is extremely useful for everybody. But mathematics to solve interesting problems in astronomy is what we study in colleges today, not in schools. Okay, so this is a application. So which is a very interesting thing, and Leelavati has some elements which have to do with Anka Pasha, which is completely novel in this text. Leelavati as such will cover all the mathematics that is done, I would say, most of the mathematics from class 3 up to class 9, okay, or 10. So we have most of the mathematics plus certain things which will be done at a later stage also, okay. So that is how Leelavati has been. Can you suggest any books related to Indian contribution to science and technology? So there are several books which have been brought out by various people. Indian National Science Academy, so which is based in Delhi, has brought out several volumes. In fact, so Indian Science and Technology itself is a voluminous book, so which has around 1000 pages, so which briefly discusses about the various contributions that have been made by Indians to science and technology. Okay, there are various books which have been authored by various people, so it is available, and lot more has to be done. So what has been done is really minuscule. In fact, one of the scholars, my own friend Professor Srinivas, made an analysis and presented a few days back in one of the meetings, and it has even been published as an article in the Indian Journal of History of Science. You are welcome to see that. So there he has analyzed so how less has been done by the Indian government so to promote study, research and teaching in Indian science and technology. So there are thousands of manuscripts which need to be first of all edited, then it has to be analyzed for its content, and then only we will know what is really interesting in that. So recently one of my PhD students who did, so we took a manuscript which was unpublished so far by Madhava, and we found something which is very, very challenging, so in trying to understand. So these are very, very important steps that we need to take. First is start teaching, introduce some courses, excite minds, then also start research. So if not immediately, in the next few years, so that we have a much broader understanding of the Indian contributions.
Can I read out those questions?
Huh?
Can I read out them?
So read out why Vedic math is not included in school syllabus. So this I tried to address right at the beginning. So it has to do with the mindset. So don't call Vedic math Vedic maths. Vedic maths, as I was mentioning earlier, is just application of algebra to solve arithmetic in a very interesting manner. But what perhaps the author, the questioner, has in his mind is, so Indian mathematics. So it has to do with the mindset. So I was just mentioning that anything that we mention, so it is considered as a detrimental step or retrograde step in trying to understand and appreciate the Indian contribution. So it has to do with the mindset, and once the mindset changes. See, there are also some problems, I don't deny that. So some sort of exaggeration has been made by a few people, but that should not come in the way. So just because, I mean, something gets polluted, so we don't see, or something gets adulterated, do we stop buying oil itself? I mean, some oil somewhere is adulterated, some milk somewhere is adulterated. I mean, similarly, some false picture is presented by somebody. That doesn't mean that one should not do this research. See, this has to be very clear in our mind. So they keep quoting that, so this was adulterated, therefore I will not purchase. So that doesn't make sense. Okay. So that is wrong, means wrong, we just ignore that. So we have to make people understand. And how can Sanskrit language be strengthened? See, this Sanskrit language is really a beautiful language. There is nothing to strengthen it. So what has to be strengthened is our mind to include it in school curriculum, or at least offer as a language which can be chosen by people. Okay, so it is the mental strength that we need to first develop to understand that by learning one more language we don't lose anything. In fact, there are some theories which have been floated by people, unfortunately, that if you introduce one more language the child will get confused. This is very silly theory, let me tell you. So in fact my mother, has learned 8 languages when she was in school. Okay, she can beautifully converse. So the moment the child gets exposed, the child picks up the language, and what is there? So you have to just allow the child to pick up. You are just stopping the child from picking up. So it is with the illusion or delusion rather that you have in your mind, but by making the child get introduced to one more language, I am overburdening the child, etc. There is nothing like that. Okay, so nothing to strengthen the language per se, but we have to just strengthen our own minds. Okay, to expose the child to pick up that language. So how is Ganita different? See, tells present math research is Protestant Platonic paradigm. How is our Ganita different? What is the scope of future research? Okay. See, the thing is, we have to understand that mathematics was not considered as something which is superhuman. So this is a problem that was sort of created by some people. That is what perhaps Professor Raju means by Protestant Platonic paradigm, etc. As far as our Indian tradition is concerned, Ganita simply means doing computation. Ganyate Sankhyayate Tat Ganitam. Okay, so Ganyate Sankhyayate Tat Ganitam. In fact, Ganitam has been further classified as Vyakta Ganitam, Avyakta Ganitam, so Gola Ganitam, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is equivalent to any other Shastra. So not some Shastra which occupies some prime position somewhere, which is what was the paradigm that was created elsewhere. And Ganita is also considered as Purusha Buddhi Prabhava. Okay, so any discipline is Purusha Buddhi Prabhava. So this is something which we need to understand. It is meant for dealing with the world, and it has been created by people to facilitate dealing with the world. So you have different kinds of problems, and different problems have to be solved by evolving various techniques in various disciplines. And Ganita is a tool which is indispensable, and it has been beautifully understood and even beautifully narrated by various authors in their own text, how it is applied to various disciplines and how it is very useful. The scope of future research, as I was mentioning, so this is something which what is this? One more question. So I think we'll move on to other question. So I was mentioning that there is a lot of research which has to be done, as I told you. So a lot of mathematics that we are talking about is found in astronomical texts, if not mathematical texts per se. See, there is a certain problem which I have to solve. I have solved in a particular way, and how do we know which way they solve unless you delve deeply into it, and several minds delve deeply into it. So it is not that one single mind will be able to comprehend everything. So because we have a vast amount of literature and there is a lot of scope for research. So with that I will end that question. How a substitutional educational system is put in society gives Vedic knowledge. See, there are attempts which are being made. See, unfortunately, not much has been done towards promoting our way of studying our Shastras, either by the government or by the private partnership or any of these millionaires. So there are not so many universities which have been established. Recently, some universities have been established by industrialists, but they have not been really convinced about the importance of studying this because of the kind of picture that is being created. So anybody who is very serious and spends enough time will easily get convinced that there is something which is worthy here, which needs to be promoted. Okay, so once this conviction comes, not out of compulsion but out of understanding, then I think we will be able to create structures which will be able to promote this. How does ancient Indian science fit into universities, schools and colleges? These educational institutions are a residue of European education format. Are they not? As Indian education system was more lineage based, home and family based, putting people in schools and imparting information to them, even if they are marketed to be ancient Indian, it is just westernization of Indian education. Is it not? It is just imparting data and information. See, the issue is whether it is Gurukula system or it is modern system. First thing that we need to know is we have to first of all expose them to this kind of a knowledge system. I must tell you, based on my own entry into the corridors of this Indian knowledge system, I am quite convinced that there are certain things which are far better understood by studying these texts than the way it is being studied in the other educational system. Okay, this modern educational system. Even mathematics, I can tell you several examples, and the students in my own class, they really feel excited when they come to understand this in this particular way. So because this formal education system through which we undergo certain training, so we just grab things as it is for the sake of examination, and we don't have any way to really ponder over even simple concepts which give you a lot of excitement when you understand fully. So whether it is a Gurukula system or modern system, first of all this system has to be introduced is the first step that we need to take. Gurukula system has its own advantages, no doubt, because the teacher is able to spend much time with the student in a focused manner and he cares for the student. In fact, those are systems in which there was a certain relation that the student is completely left in your care. Now we have come to a certain education system in which even if the teacher questions the student, the teacher will be in trouble. So this is what is happening. So in Gurukula system, in fact people had to prove their worth, that their children can be left under their care. The Guru has to first prove his worth, both as a scholar as well as a caring person. So there are advantages and disadvantages in the system, but the question is how to fit them. So one can simply open a certain department, as so many departments are being opened in various universities and institutions of higher learning. So what is the problem in opening in one department? So wherein these studies can be promoted. So if there is a certain conviction that this is worth pursuing. In fact, there are so many people today, let me give you one example. So somebody had written an article, and it is a scholarly article, and he says that there are at least 100,000 books which have been authored on caste system, okay, and the various problems, at least 100,000. So still there are so many universities wherein people are keep studying. So what is something new which is emerging out of it? I don't understand. Whereas there are lakhs of really new manuscripts which have to be studied and which you feel that it is all worthless. So it has to do with the mindset rather than the problem. So the problem is the mindset. So when there are lakh books on one particular topic, I mean, what is new that is going to emerge? I don't understand. Okay. So this is where the problem is.
One last question. Can you give some insights on Bharatiya mathematics and artificial intelligence, machine learning and where the technology?
This artificial intelligence learning is a completely different story. So I don't think so. One should just say that this mathematics, this by studying this immediately I will be able to apply it. So this is primarily meant for children who can learn the basics of mathematics. See, whether it is something which will lead me to solve some problem in differential geometry, some problem in algebraic geometry, some problem in Lie algebra, some problem in set theory, etc. That is not something which I will say yes. So what you study is a certain training to think in a particular way. So it is the thinking that actually leads you to something. The training to think in a particular way and go deep into it. So that is what is important. So you can learn certain skills to do something and things will keep on emerging as it has been emerging in our own Indian system. So when in the 14th century, so Madhava can come with infinite series. So it has been a certain training that he got plus one's own brilliance. See, Buddhyati Shaya. So brilliance and intelligence is something which will flower up. But the Bharatiya mathematics that I am referring to and the style in which it has been authored will be extremely useful for children to learn things joyfully without developing any kind of a phobia. So even basic things are not learned and people just come out of schools. So standard 8 he may be coming out, but he may not know how to multiply, he may not know how to divide, he may not know how to find square root. So what is the big deal in trying to provide an educational system where he can solve some matrix and eigenvalue? So they don't understand anything about it. So you teach some basic things solidly and in an exciting way. So this is what has been attempted rather than pumping in too much of information without understanding. So this is all I will just say. The relevance immediately, and as I was mentioning, so this can be presented in such a way that it will promote not only learning mathematics, learning language, learning the beauty of composing things in the form of poetry, nurturing creativity. So all things can be really encouraged. So the other thing that people think is, so what is the relevance of presenting something in the form of verses, etc., etc. See, let me ask you this question. Today, every Tom, Dick and Harry wants to write a book on mathematics and physics. I mean, as if things are not available. So if you just take matrix theory, there will be some 1500 authors who would have written on matrix theory, if not more. If you just take some linear algebra, there will be some 2600 books on that. So why should we be writing books? So it is essentially some new thing, some new problem might have been added, etc., etc. There are various compulsions why they write. But when it comes to this, the people just feel, and if you can really think of some brilliant example and brilliant poetry, come what may in which language you compose, so that itself is an act of creativity. It is really beautiful. So this is something which so you learn literature, you learn language, you learn mathematics, you learn so many things in the process. Okay, so this is really advantageous, and to just see that we provide a holistic education, these are things which need to be explored. Okay, thank you, namaste.